Do you want me to tell everyone what just happened?
Yeah.
So we've been recording episode 15 of the Constant Geekery podcast for the last 25, 30 minutes, and it was going really, really well. In fact, probably the best podcast we've ever recorded, except we didn't actually record it, did we, Dave?
Not as such, no.
No.
I mean, I'd like to blame the audio recorder in this case. I'd like to, but I can't. It was my fault because I didn't press the button. And I'm quite gutted about that.
It makes me feel better because I did exactly the same thing about 3 podcasts ago. So suffice to say, welcome again to the Constant Geekery podcast.
In fairness, Pete, that was a slightly better introduction than we did on our supposedly much better podcast.
Yeah, it was actually rubbish.
So I tell you what, we'll attempt to redo this, but let me tell you what's coming up in the podcast today. Our main topic is talking about cheap tech and how you can acquire some cheap tech sometimes, get some good deals. That's probably not going to take very long to explain, but that's our main topic for the week. We've also got a bit of news to talk about. We wanted to just cycle back to the whole iPad versus laptop thing that we discussed last week with some additional insights. We've got our competition to announce, and I think it's fair to say the most exciting thing on the agenda is Pete's Apple Pencil update, which we'll be bringing to you there at the end. I imagine that you'll try to resist, if you can, the temptation to skip ahead to that portion. If you can, contain your excitement, please. I recognise it is very thrilling to hear the update on Pete's Apple Pencil.
It really isn't, but a few people wanted to know, so there we go.
Okay, I just want to start out by talking about courier companies because we were ragging on Hermes as a result of them having the same name as Hermes,
yes,
but slightly different pronunciation.
And standard of service and quality.
Yeah, other courier companies are available, as it turns out. And you would think, Pete, probably that you would get much better service if you went with something like UPS.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, they've got a gold logo, gold and brown. I mean, that is the pinnacle of premium, isn't it?
It is pretty amazing, yeah. And wasn't it UPS that was in that Tom Hanks movie? Wasn't he a UPS guy? Or was it DHL?
Which Tom Hanks movie? There's Forrest Gump?
No, the one with the volleyball called Wilson.
Oh, yes, I think he might have been UPS, actually. Yeah.
And he went to great lengths, it must be said, to deliver those parcels. So you put your confidence in UPS. Well, I put my confidence in UPS when I sold the venerable 12-core Mac Pro that has featured so much on the main channel, youtube.com/constantgeekery. And I decided to ship it with UPS because they don't have a fit about Apple products.
Well, Apple use them as well, don't they?
They do. I can recall my previous Mac Pro, which was a 5.1 12-core, and I shipped that to a gentleman in the Netherlands via DPD, and they decided that it was an iMac and therefore it wasn't insured, despite the fact I paid for the insurance. They didn't give me the money back for the insurance. They just decided it was an iMac.
Right.
And said, because it has a glass screen, we can't protect it. I said, it's not an iMac. It's an aluminium Mac Pro. There's no screen in there whatsoever or any glass. Yeah, that's what I had to deal with. They did deliver it in the end. It was such a stressful experience that I decided to go UPS this time.
So how did that work out? I'm sure it was a premium service, really.
Well, what happened is that around about 10 o'clock, I got a notification saying they'd attempted delivery and weren't able to deliver. In fact, it didn't say that. What it said was they'd attempted a second delivery and they would make a final delivery on the Monday. I think it was Friday it was going out.
Right, okay.
So I paid for next day delivery, yeah. And somehow by 10 o'clock they'd done 2 attempts.
That's impressive to attempt it twice by that time.
In the same day.
Yeah.
To go back in the same day, yeah. Except that's a barefaced lie, and that didn't happen because the address it was going to is a business premises with a staffed reception, and they never even attempted delivery. And then I had a long phone call with someone at UPS who said that the driver would go back, though, the same day to deliver it. So,
and did they?
No.
Oh, okay.
It did eventually arrive, so that's nice.
Are you sure they weren't subcontracting to Hermes?
Or Yodel, which is even worse. So you think I probably would favour not using UPS again,
Well, yeah.
but I did, like some kind of mug, because the thing is, when you're shipping stuff that's not your average run-of-the-mill stuff,
Yeah.
if you go to Royal Mail or DPD or places like that, they tend to have a little bit of a meltdown over it, and they don't like it, and their list of exclusions is huge, and their cost for their insurance is ridiculous. And UPS is more reasonable.
I know what you mean, because DPD took issue when I tried to ship that enriched uranium a few weeks ago. Do you remember?
I don't even know how to respond to that. I'd love to know what goes on in your head, Pete. You just come out with such left field stuff. Perhaps it's because you've been hanging around enriched uranium.
It could be. Have you ever seen the YouTube video Nyan Cat?
I have.
That's basically my stream of consciousness.
Excellent. The 100-hour version.
It's I never get any peace from it.
All right. Shall I get back to the story? And
Yeah.
then we can get on to our main topic.
Yeah. So you were saying that couriers have a list of exceptions, but not so much UPS.
They do. So I was sold a guitar. Not the most expensive guitar in the world, but still expensive by a lot of people's standards. £1,200-ish.
Yeah, that is.
I packed it up really nice with a proper guitar shipping case, which again is,
They're not cheap.
no bit of cost involved, and sent it off. And the UPS systems just seem to be completely disconnected, because I got the same sort of thing again. I got a message saying the address was wrong, and it was going to delay the shipment. Well, the address wasn't wrong. The buyer on the tracking screen, it said they'd attempted delivery and weren't able to deliver. And then so that's in the morning, and when he gets home from work around 6 o'clock, he finds the guitar on his doorstep. They just left it on his doorstep.
A £1,200 guitar.
Yeah, on a terrace street in Stockport, in the drizzle.
Wow.
And
That's shocking.
it's
That's rubbish.
and the box had a logo on, something like it said "Rock and Roll Legends" or something.
So basically, please steal me.
Yeah, a guitar box looking, not one of those. If you buy a guitar that doesn't come with a hard case, which is normal for guitars, say up to, let's say, £700-800,
Yeah.
they'll come in a sort of triangular shaped case.
Yeah.
Or a triangular shaped shipping box. This is not. This is a square shaped shipping box, because it was originally for another guitar that I bought that had a hard case in. So it's a dead giveaway to anyone who knows what they're looking for, that something good is in that box,
Yeah.
and they just left it out there.
Wow.
So well done, UPS.
Did you take that up with UPS?
No, I can't be. I can't be bothered, and I'll tell you why, Pete. It's because, and I've got another experience, but I won't share that today. But I will share it next week, because it's quite interesting. An experience of just abysmal customer service, absolutely abysmal customer service, and this kind of, people will say, and I think you alluded to it either earlier or possibly in the podcast that we didn't record, but there's this illusion of customer service.
Yes.
It's like you'll speak to someone who's really nice, and it seems like they want to help you, but they don't. They don't give a flying toss. They won't do anything at all. So it's a waste of your. You just get stressed out, and that's not good for your heart, folks. So it's not. It's just
Well,
not.
customer service is two elements, isn't it? It's showing that you care about what the person's going through, and then either yourself personally as that customer services representative, or the infrastructure of the business behind you then following through on what you say you're going to do. So I'm sure there's some customer services people out there that genuinely do care, and they then hand it off to whoever's got to execute the remedial action, and that's where it falls down, and that must be very frustrating. And then that business really has to look at its customer experience and say, actually, what are we doing here? But UPS, usually pretty shocking.
I'm glad you went with the word shocking, because that wasn't the first word that came into my head.
Other words starting with S are available. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, fortunately, we don't have to use courier companies for anything sort of upcoming, do we?
Sadly, we do, because we're going to announce the winner for our competition. Now, this competition, so if you listen to the podcast, as I know many of you do on your favourite podcast platform of choice, then you won't see us and what I'm about to talk about. So if you do want to see us, and I do strongly caution you that you may not want to see us. But it's youtube.com/The Constant Geekery Podcast.
You know, sometimes at the beginning of news reports, they say the following report contains disturbing images that some viewers might find upsetting. Consider that your warning if you're only listening and think, do you know, I wonder what these guys look like. Don't do it.
Basically, I would say, Pete, that our podcast is a cure for all sleep conditions.
Yeah.
So if you are struggling to get to sleep, listen to the podcast on your favourite audio platform of choice. Yeah.
In fact, the Calm app has approached both of us to read some bedtime stories because of our dulcet, soft and soothing tones.
It has. If, on the other hand, you have no trouble getting to sleep at all and your problem is waking up, then you need to watch the Constant Geekery podcast on YouTube, because then those nightmares, they just won't go away. So there we go, a cure for all sleep conditions. Anyway,
You're welcome.
Back to the competition. When we weren't in the studio recording our podcast via Zoom, we had a purple background to our image on YouTube. And what the competition was for people to guess what was behind the purple background. And the amazing prize that is on offer, and I used the term amazing completely incorrectly. The prize that is on offer is possibly the cheapest Chromebook we could find.
And do you know what's really ironic? The first time we recorded this, you said, I should have gone and got it. It's in the cupboard.
Still haven't got it.
We still haven't got it. But yeah, if you imagine a really cheap-looking silver laptop, it has got a good screen, hasn't it?
It has got a lovely display.
But it's not married to anything that makes it worthwhile. That is the Chromebook. On the other hand, you know, some people might love it.
You might, assuming the battery still works, because it's been stuck in a cupboard for over a year.
Yeah.
We took it out of the box. We recorded a video with it, which is no longer online because we upset too many people, I think, who didn't get our sense of humour. And put it back in its box. So it's had an hour of usage, if that. And it's actually surprisingly not that bad. Well, I think we're being overly harsh on it. It was an okay for the price we paid for it, which I think was £230 or something. It was all right.
Yeah. It did what it was meant to do.
Anyway,
so.
let's now do the reveal, Pete, of the purple background. And since we don't have a purple background on the podcast at the moment, by the magic of video editing, Tom will now put up over our faces, probably, if he's got any sense, the purple background. And now remove the purple. And yeah, there we go. If you were expecting something exciting, it's not. It's a piece of video shot in my garden. And it has featured on the main channel before, because I used those bits of footage in one of the video tests that I did.
Yeah.
So we did give you a clue, but nobody got it.
No one really came close, did they?
Not really.
Which is understandable. I mean, it could have been anything.
So we decided, rather than string this out any longer, we shall just give it to a random person. And the random person we picked is, and I hope I get your name right, either Jari or Yari Lomakin. So sorry if I've butchered your name, but you are indeed the winner. So if you can just get in touch with us via podcast@constantgeekery.com, either to give us your address so that we can send it to you, or to tell us how you would like it to be destroyed, and we will indeed do that.
Within reason. Obviously, you know, trek up to Kilimanjaro and fish it over the side. Actually, that would be a great trip.
I'm happy for you to go and do that.
Yeah. Do you know, one of our mutual colleagues actually nearly fell back into a volcano once.
I know who it is as well.
Taking a picture. It's like back a bit further, back a bit further. They did actually nearly fall into an active volcano. Anyway.
So let's move on to our main topic.
What's the main topic of the week? I know you've said it already, but just to remind people.
Cheap tech. And it's very difficult to get cheap tech at the moment. I'm going to tell you how I managed to get a cheap graphics card. Cheap is a relative term, of course. A cheaper than it should have been graphics card, and also this cheap laptop that's before me. So if you are watching us on youtube.com/The Constant Geekery Podcast, you'll be able to see that sat in front of me is a black laptop. It is a Razer Blade Stealth 13.
That's very nice.
A glorious OLED display with fantastic colours on, has to be said.
Yeah, and it's got a lovely build quality to it. I can see that from here. It's very MacBook Pro-esque.
It is. Somehow, though, the speakers. No one seems to be able to do speakers like Apple.
Or trackpads.
No, the trackpad on this.
Is it good?
Yeah.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd say it.
Is it though?
Yes, it is.
All right.
It definitely, even with Windows, it does a good job. It's a nice laptop. If you go onto Razer's website, this particular specification, I can't remember the exact price, but it's in the region of £2,000,
Right.
which is possibly overpriced for a 13-inch laptop.
Yeah, possibly. Sounds a bit high.
It is the 11th gen Core i7 in there.
Is it an Evo laptop?
It's not an Evo laptop because it has a dedicated graphics card as well.
Okay.
So I should say the spec. It's an 1165 G7. It's got 16 gigs of RAM. I think the SSD is 512. It's the OLED display, and it's got 1650 Ti Max Q GPU
Nice.
with 4 gigs of RAM.
And you're running Big Sur on that?
I'm running Windows 10. Yes.
Okay.
So just to put this in perspective, single core performance compared to, Intel, we spoke about this on the main channel, the Evo versus the M1. So let me tell you where it actually is. Single core performance, not far off the M1.
Okay.
I suspect in certain things, the Intel would win. When it comes to a Geekbench benchmark, which is not fully reflective of the real world, it's a little bit behind.
Okay.
But in the real world, probably about the same.
Yeah.
Multi-core performance, well, it's a quad-core. And no, it's nowhere near the M1.
Interesting.
So whatever Intel will tell you, it just isn't. That said, there are a lot of apps that won't use more than about 4 cores anyway. So I suspect there are, again, in the real world, it probably doesn't make that much difference. But is it as fast as an M1? No, it's not.
Okay. But it's a nice laptop.
It's a nice laptop. Now, the onboard graphics, the Iris Xe graphics that are on that chip are astonishingly good and very close to M1 for onboard graphics performance.
Okay.
So it's not a million miles away, although, of course, it is an x86 chip, and to get the full performance, you've got to plug the laptop in, which is something that Intel glossed over, of course, in their presentation.
Do the fans come on a lot?
They do if you're working it, yeah, the fans will come on. Again, something that the M1 doesn't have to worry about. But it's a nice laptop. If you need a PC, a really great choice. And that 1650 Ti graphics card, well, that's offering you more than double the performance of what's on the M1.
Wow.
So
that's good.
For video editing purposes, actually, Tom's got one of these as well now. And he connects it up to the eGPU, which I've featured a lot on the channel, and he uses his for doing the video editing. And yeah, it's very good. But you can also do good video editing on the go with it. So,
Well, great machine then.
great machine. So maybe £2,000. I don't know. I wouldn't have paid £2,000 for it, and I didn't.
Okay.
I think I paid £1,250 for it.
Wow. That's quite a discount.
Particularly, bear in mind, I've had this 2 months, and this model was released late 2020. So this is not
Okay. It's
an
not an
out of
old
date
stock.
No. Now, what happens? So, how do you get a laptop like this for cheap? Well, what happens is Amazon buy up stock from companies, particularly coming up to Christmas time. So, if a company isn't selling stuff as fast as they want, Amazon will buy pallet loads of stuff. And we've seen this with our customers in our web business.
Yeah.
Customers who are in retail, and Amazon come along and wave a load of cash, basically, and it's great just to move stock out and have money in the bank and space in your warehouse. So companies will do that. I don't know why Razer did that, but what happens is, or what seems to happen, I don't know what actually goes on, but what seems to happen is Amazon put an algorithm on the product. So they want it sold by a certain date, and the algorithm will automatically change the price and drop the price until they've cleared out the stock.
Because warehouse space costs money.
Right. So in the example that we saw with our customer, they sold a whole load of products, and they had a product that was retailing £35, £40
Yeah.
and was easily worth that. Manufacturing cost was higher than what Amazon was. Amazon were selling them for £2.
Yeah. It was just, and the challenge for our customers, of course, it was devaluing their brand because they were selling below cost. So people's perception was that's how much one of those things cost, when it didn't.
Especially when you Google it and then you're seeing, and
Price
this
comparison,
does seem to happen with PCs. Of course, those deals get snapped up quickly when people see them, and The reason why this one didn't get snapped up is because somebody made a complete pig's ear of typing up the product description. So they got certain specs wrong, put specs in the wrong place. So when people were searching using the Amazon filters, which are not particularly great at the best of times, it wasn't coming up. And they also misdescribed it in a number of ways that made it confusing as to what actual product it was.
Okay.
So I decided, get out the Amex card and take a punt on it, because I've got Amazon Prime, it's on Amex. What could go wrong? If they deliver something that is not what I think it is, I can just send it back. Or worst case, get my money back from Amex.
So you just bought one?
I just bought one. And it arrived, and it was indeed the model that I thought it might have been. But because of that situation, it was getting sold off cheap. Now, at the same time, we had need within the business for Intel Macs for our developers. So the 15-inch MacBook Pro that Tom was using to edit on, I sold that into our business. One of our developers has that now. And I bought 2 more whilst they were cheap. But then 3 days later, it had gone down another £150.
Wow. So 1,100 quid.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Pounds, sorry, for those. Quid is bucks.
Imperial credits of the realm, I think, is the favoured.
Groats.
So I'm not saying that you're going to go onto Amazon and find loads and loads of these deals, but they do exist, and this isn't the first time that I've managed to get deals like this.
Yeah.
You've just got to think a little bit outside the box. You've got to be prepared to take what's on offer. It's the same in the, we do a lot of work in the car leasing industry here in the UK.
I was just about to say that. If you're not absolutely tied to a particular spec, colour, or what have you, if you've got, I'm happy with this type of thing, but I'm not too fussed about the exact spec or model, but this kind, maybe this type of brand, make or model. But I'm flexible. You can often pick up some incredible deals.
Well, let's detail the deals that we've got 2 Volvo V90s at the moment. Not in the, I think they're in the entry spec, but entry spec on a 45 grand car or whatever it is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And they're 200 plus VAT a month,
which is, well, probably. I don't know how the company makes money on those.
Well, they don't make money, and I could explain how that works, but yeah, that's being sold at a loss. In fact, I'll tell you how it works, because this is supposed to be cheap cars, cheap tech, whatever. Seems that cars are in the tech world these days because they're mostly computer controlled. So those 2 cars that we got came from a dealer in the north of England. So they came from a main Volvo dealer, and the Volvo dealers, well, they'll have targets to meet. So they have to sell a certain number of each model of cars. Now, in the south of England, somewhere like Bournemouth or Poole, which is, lots of wealthy people living in the area, selling V90s off the forecourt is probably not too tricky. No. In the north of England, and I don't mean anything by this at all, but just statistically,
it's the same phenomenon happens where we are in sort of the rural part of Somerset.
Yeah, exactly. So
people don't want that type of car.
No, and so they don't sell them, but they need to sell them in order to keep their dealership quota and everything else. So what they'll do is they'll sell them cheaply to lease companies for finance deals, and then the lease company and the broker will get together and they'll organise some kind of special deal to ship these cars out. They're quite often pre-registered as well, so that's why dealerships register cars, because they register it in their own name to make it look like it's sold to hit the targets, and then they'll sell it off cheap. So there's lots of different deals that you can get in the industry, but if like Pete said, you're prepared to take whatever's available, on a special offer, then you can get an incredible deal.
Yeah, definitely. Never buy list price for a car, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So the same thing happens with tech, same thing happens with Amazon. These companies are working on such enormous economies of scale that for Amazon, having the warehouse space is more of a priority than making a profit. And they don't look so in such a granular way. They're not looking at how much profit did we make on that one laptop sale to Dave. They're not interested in that.
They're looking at the big picture, aren't they?
Yeah. So if in the big picture they're making money and they've got warehouse space, then everything's good.
And also it does seem that big companies seem to be able to operate in a completely different financial model to normal businesses like ours, where they can operate at a loss for years and years and years. So I understand the economics of that to a degree, but we can't do that.
No. Anyway, so that's a bit of a top tip there for either getting yourself a car, although obviously that's very UK specific. I don't know how it works in other areas of the world, and I know a lot of our listeners and viewers are in other parts of the world, but certainly in the UK, shop around for lease deals. It's absolutely incredible, even if you want to buy the car, in fact, because at the end of the lease, the company will come and pick it up. And, well, I say the company will come and pick it up. It isn't, is it? It's the auction company will come and collect it. It will go straight to auction and they'll take whatever they get for it. So if you offer them some money for the car, you can take the car at the end.
Yeah, get a good deal.
I actually did this on the Jaguar that I had. So I had a Jaguar XE, which I actually got from a main dealer, but I leased it, which is probably, again, an experience for another day. But it's quite interesting the way the economics work with that. But the total cost and then the price of purchasing the car at the end, because I did ask them for a quote, add that to all of the lease payments I paid, and it still didn't come to the retail value of the car.
By a long way?
There's a couple of grand in it.
Well, okay.
So if you went onto the forecourt and bought it at retail on a finance deal, not only would you have paid a couple of grand more
for the finance,
you'd have paid all of the interest as well, which is much higher, and you'd have been paying more per month. So it does pay to try and think outside of the box to get yourself a little bit of a bargain. And I like to buy smart with these things and have nice things. And I suspect a lot of people think that I'm just absolutely minted, but
he's not. He's very, very clever.
Well, I don't know about that. I managed to find some deals anyway. Let me tell you about one other deal that I've got in tech. And this is a graphics card that I got for half price.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
Where?
eBay.
Okay. How did you do that then?
Well, I bought it from someone on eBay, and it was half the price it should have been.
Okay.
That was a good
Great.
story, wasn't it?
Thanks for enriching our lives with that story.
So you know how some people on eBay, like me, if I'm selling something, I'll go to town on it. I'll take nice pictures.
Yeah.
I'll take my time to write a compelling description. And, when somebody buys it, I'll go to town on the packaging and the service and everything, make sure they get it as quickly as humanly possible.
And he does. Honestly, he's very, very good.
Yeah. The money hits or I get notified, and the money doesn't hit the account. It hits eBay's account, and you get notified you've got to ship. Well, I'm straight down the post office or online to the courier company of choice, whatever, whichever one I'm choosing for my pain that day, and we get it done. And I think that's the right way to do things. However, not everybody is like that. So I found on eBay. So I need to come back a bit. My workstation.
Yeah.
Which. Again, I'm not super wealthy, folks who are watching this. I took out a loan to get my workstation, which was going to be a Mac Pro, and then the whole M1 thing happened. So I went with the Lenovo workstation. It's wonderful. I love it. It's absolutely great for video editing, and that's what I use it for. Now, when I bought it, I don't need the amount of power that's in this workstation. Can I just point that out? This is a case of I wanted it, and I was prepared to make the monthly payments, so that's what I've got. But when I bought it, it came with one GPU. So I've got this situation, and there's a video coming up on the channel about this, but I've got this situation where I've got this 32-core workstation, and the GPU that is in it is a Quadro RTX 5000. Now, it's a workstation card because it's a workstation. So if you're not familiar with this, workstation cards, you pay more for them because you get a longer warranty, you're getting things like ECC RAM, and you're getting vendor certification with the drivers, so you know it's going to work.
Yeah. And
that's why people pay more money for Quadro cards. Now, the retail price for a Quadro RTX 5000 is just over £2,000. I could only afford to put one in my workstation, but I've always been curious, what would the performance be like with two?
Yeah, I've often wondered that myself as well.
Well, I will answer that question for you all on the main channel later this week. So I went on eBay and I found the RTX 5000 stock image.
Yeah.
And in the eBay thing, it said brand new.
Yeah.
But the person, all they'd written was RTX 5000. That was the title. Not even capitalized the RTX, just RTX 5000. And in the description, it just said RTX 5000. That was it. And one stock image.
They've gone to town.
I really, really worked hard on that. Now, I'm not for a moment suggesting that people should just run out and buy stuff from auctions that look like that, because quite often that will be some sort of scam.
Yeah, there are videos, if you go on YouTube, of people who deliberately go out looking for, not just on eBay, but Wish and places like that with, supposedly high-end graphics cards, and they turn out to be like 10 years old and with just a ridiculous heatsink on them or something.
But that said, having experienced this from the other angle, as a seller, eBay gives all of the protection to the buyer. And if something goes wrong and you've paid for it through eBay's payment system, then you're protected. If it doesn't turn up, if it's wrong, you'll get the refund. But to double caution that, put it on the Amex or whatever your credit card is of choice. I choose Amex because I know that they're very, very good. If you've got a problem with something, they'll sort it out and they'll give you your money back. Or Barclaycard,
Yep.
So I just thought to myself, I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to put a bid in and we'll see what happens, because I suspect no one's going to bid on it because they'll think it's a scam or they'll think it's fake.
And so you got it for?
1,100.
Wow. And it is what it
was
purports to be.
It was a brand spanking new Quadro RTX 5000 still sealed in its box. Yeah.
Excellent.
So I now have the two cards, and then I bought the link piece to go with it. So I just feel like I've enhanced my workstation and my credit card debt, but I do have I do these things not because I desperately need all of that graphics performance, but because I wanted to build something,
and it's part of what it generates content for the channels, and it's part of what we do. So, and if we find that works, then we can implement that in the business, and that's a win for everyone.
That's it. So another top tip there, that's you can get deals on eBay, and the Lenovo workstation itself was a deal. It was £3,000 less than it should have been, nearly. So if you buy at the right time and you shop around for these deals, you can get much better value for your money. And to get a similar cost Mac Pro or similar spec Mac Pro now with the same sort of GPU power and the same CPU horsepower, well, there isn't a Mac Pro with the same CPU horsepower. Their top chip is the 28-core Xeon, which isn't as fast as the Threadripper Pro. So
there you go. You've got something faster.
But to spec a similar thing, you're talking £17,000 or something crazy from Apple.
17,000. That's mad.
Over 5 years, monthly payments, and
business asset.
So it's bought through the company, I should say, not personally. So actually, that's the total with the VAT, and I get the VAT back, and I get the corporation tax back.
We did talk about this a long time ago, didn't we? I can't remember whether it was on the podcast or whether it was on the main channel about how when you're buying something for your business, I think it was on the main channel, the economics are different than if you're buying personally. So,
But coming back to the graphics card, the Quadro RTX 5000 is basically a 2080 Super. So think previous generation of Intel. So it's still got ray tracing. A 2080 Super, that's a pretty impressive card, but with double the video RAM.
Wow. Okay.
Now, there's nothing stopping you using the Quadro for gaming, because I indeed do.
Do you?
Yeah. And it's absolutely incredible. Amazing performance. And if you can get one, you might find a 2080 Super for about £800 used, maybe on eBay. I think last time I checked.
And you got one brand new with double the video RAM for £1,100, for £300 more.
So I think if you're shopping for GPU, don't rule out a Quadro card. Although I probably wouldn't go lower than the RTX 5000 if you want to do gaming. But there are deals out there. And the same guy, incidentally, that I bought that from, he had RTX 6000 cards, and they were going. He was asking $2,000 for that, and they're double that normally.
Wow.
So that's an absolute monster of a card. 24 gigs of video RAM and way more performance than the RTX 5000. So there are deals out there, folks, but you've got to be a little bit savvy and don't do what all of the mainstream consumers are doing, because there's no deals to be had there.
No, definitely not. God, it's starting to feel like we're some kind of sort of consumer watchdog advice channel with all the courier work and how to get cheap deals. We're almost like the Martin Lewis of the tech world.
Absolutely. If I knew who Martin Lewis was, I'd
Money
really...
saving expert.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, he's some kind of consumer champion. Good chap. But certainly got some good tips if you want to save money on things like insurance and household bills and that. Not that sounds like we're sponsored by him, and we're not. But there we go.
I just so it's useful to. Well, I hope that was useful information for you guys. If you're in the market for computer kit or tech kit, yeah, there's not loads of it about, but keep your eyes open. Be prepared to take a little risk, but back it up with a credit card. Don't be silly about it. And you never know, you might get yourself something.
This has given me an idea for some new content, but we'll talk about that another time.
Oh, I don't like the way that's going. my credit card's already switched.
Used to have Dave Drinks and Pete's Eats. Now we have Dave Shops.
I'm good at shopping, in fairness.
Excellent stuff. Good tips, though. Really good tips.
Yeah. So what about the news, Pete? There's...
a couple of things that I thought were interesting this week. Apple are working on a 5G modem of their own. Not going to be ready before 2023 at the earliest. But I thought that was interesting because obviously, it's not really a surprise when you think they're building and forging their own silicon now that they're working on that as well. But that's obviously going to have represent a threat to Qualcomm, who currently produce all of the modems for their iPhones and indeed iPads that are equipped with such. Now, as I understand it, high-end Android phones, the sales on those are quite slow at the moment globally. So Qualcomm are going to have a hole once Apple start producing their own modems that they're going to have to fill to keep their business sustainable. So they're going to have to be looking at other devices. And if high-end sales are slow on Android, that means they're going to have to be entering at that ultra-competitive mid to low-end market, which is a challenge for Qualcomm, but will potentially be good for consumers, as more competition normally means better pricing.
Yeah, I don't think Qualcomm are going to be in sort of massive financial trouble as a result of this. I think they know this was coming because it's been. I'm sure I've heard talk of this some time ago, and at the end of the day, it's obvious that Apple are going to do it. It's exactly what they did to Power VR, and in all likelihood, it wouldn't surprise me actually if they're going to. I mean, the situation with Power VR, for example, they provided the GPUs originally on the iPhones, and then Apple developed their own, but still using a lot of Power VR technology. In fact, the M1 still does.
Right.
The GPU works in a similar way to Power VR. And as a result of that, there was a bit of a court. Did it even go to court? There was certainly some legal wranglings between Apple and Imagination Technologies in the UK who
I remember that now. Yeah.
And Apple are now paying a royalty, I think, to Imagination Technologies. But I'm pretty sure they also nicked some of their staff. Apple, and we spoke about this before, they
do that.
We are not fans of Apple's corporate behaviour. They seem to be totally intent on world domination. The way they treat the whole right to repair movement. Showing up at the John Deere hearings in various parts of the US because they just want to get involved in this whole right to repair thing. That is probably something
we need to talk about, isn't it?
We do.
Yeah, we definitely do.
Yeah. Anyway, that'd be interesting to see what happens.
It'd be interesting to see what innovations they bring with that 5G modem as well, because no doubt they will. They're not just going to say, "Oh, by the way, we make our own now." It's going to have something with it, but who knows what that will be.
And Qualcomm is they're working with Microsoft on the SQ1, SQ2 now as it is. Microsoft are keen to continue ARM development. Qualcomm are going to continue ARM development. I mean, they'll all be chasing it. AMD, Intel, Nvidia, they're all trying to make ARM CPUs. Amazon, of course, they've made their own in partnership with someone. Can't remember who, but for their server farms.
Wow. Okay.
So this is.
That's what happens with innovation, though, isn't it? Things change. Things don't stay the same. So, there's plenty of demand for chip design and chip manufacture in the world, as we know at the moment. There's a massive shortage, so I'm sure Qualcomm will be fine.
Yeah, I think Apple have just sped things up passably for the consumer market space. I was actually I got a comment on one of my very old videos the other day, and I just rewatched it, which is to do with CPUs, a CPU primer. And in that video, which predates M1 by some time, I predicted it won't be long until we get ARM laptops. It doesn't make me some kind of special oracle. That was a pretty obvious development. I don't think we really expected how quickly it would happen.
No.
And the M1 has been a riotous success for Apple, and it's clearly got Intel and Microsoft scared.
Rattled,
yeah. So they'll all be at it. They'll all be pushing to produce ARM stuff, and Qualcomm will be in that mix.
Yeah.
They'll be partnered up with some of them because they're so good at it.
And that's good for us, folks.
Mm.
You know, as the end users, we get choice, we get innovation, as opposed to the same old with a bit more horsepower.
Mm.
So that's really good.
And laptops that don't burn your knees as well.
That would be nice, yeah.
Nice.
Speaking of laptops, we talked about iPads and laptops last week, didn't we?
Yeah, so I did say that I'd put in the order for mine, and Apple ship out the bits they have available. So I haven't got the iPad yet, but I have got the Magic Keyboard.
Okay.
Now, I don't want to go into this in too much detail because I'm going to do a review for the main channel. And the big difficulty with it is the price.
Yeah.
It makes me want to spit feathers, the amount of money that Apple are charging for it.
It's crazy. And you obviously had to go for the slightly more expensive one as well, didn't you? Because you got the bigger iPad.
Yeah. But of course, it is backwards compatible, folks. So my iPad, 3rd generation, works fine on it. It's rejuvenated my iPad. You see, because I previously had it in the same case that you've got here. Again, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see that Pete's got a Logitech case. And this features some kind of rubber bumpers around the corners to protect. And it is a very good case for protecting your iPad. But here's a question for you.
But not your pencil.
Not your pencil. It won't protect your iPad either from voracious dogs who enjoy munching on tech. Question for you, though, Pete. And that is, why don't you put a rubber bumper on your Apple laptop?
Because I don't want to ruin the aesthetic of it.
Have you ever dropped your...
No.
So why do you put a rubber bumper on your iPad?
Say rubber bumper again.
Rubber bumper. Rumba bumper.
Rubber bumper.
Yeah.
It's a good question, I guess, because you bought me this, or I say you bought me this, you bought these for the company, and that's what it came with. But it makes sense for phones, doesn't it? Because I do drop my phone. Most people do. I'm sure you don't. You've got some kind of anti-gravity thing where you don't drop tech, but I do drop my phone. But you're right, I've never dropped my iPad.
So just take it out of its case a minute.
Okay.
And which we don't often do with our devices, do we? We get this beautiful iPad and then we pop it into a case.
Look at that.
Look how thin it is. Have you noticed?
Yeah, it's beautiful. I took it out the other day, and these are clean, to be fair, but it's amazing.
It's fantastic. Right, so let me tell you what the Magic Keyboard does for the iPad. Because you magnetically attach the iPad onto the Magic Keyboard, and it holds it very sturdy, I have to say, you're more aware of just how thin and beautiful that iPad is, which is one of the reasons why you bought it in the first place.
Yeah.
So that's nice. It's easy to take off.
Yeah.
And put back on. Yes, there's not as much protection there when you fold it up.
Yeah.
But if you're not in the habit of throwing your tech around or playing ultimate frisbee with it, then you're probably okay. The other thing that it does, it provides that touchpad. And the touchpad, although it's small, is very good, and it responds to the gestures as you'd expect it to. So the gestures that you do on screen, you can do on the touchpad.
Okay.
And having the little dot moving around, I actually find it really good. It adds much more functionality to the iPad, makes it more like a laptop, which is what we've been talking about. But the other thing, of course, it does is it keeps fingerprints off the screen, which is another pet hate. So your iPad stays cleaner for longer. And that makes it feel, particularly with the design of the Magic Keyboard, it makes your iPad feel like a new device. If you come back and look at the price tag now...
Yeah, it changes the dimension of it in your head, doesn't it?
It does. There's more to it than that. I'm going to save that for the channel, but I have to say it's a really nice product, and it definitely enhances your iPad. If you have an iPad Pro from the 3rd generation onwards, and on the 12.9, I think the different numbering scheme for the 11-inch, but if you've got an iPad that will fit on one of these Magic Keyboard stands, and it's a little bit long in the tooth, but you can't quite afford a new iPad. The simple truth is, as we've said before, these iPads are still fast enough.
Yeah.
Get a Magic Keyboard and make your iPad feel like a new one. Dare I say it?
It's like valeting your car. If you feel fed up with your car, it makes it feel like new.
Yeah.
Good tip there. Good tip there.
Yeah, possibly. I don't rush out and give Apple huge amounts of your money just on that basis, obviously.
I'm not even going to mention Tim Cook's pension today. Oh.
So, anyway, I've been using my iPad quite a lot.
That's good. And it does look nice with that keyboard on. I am impressed.
It does. And I had the opportunity to copy some files the other day, which got me to thinking about one of the comments that we made in the video, and also a comment that we got from a viewer. So this is from Garance. Hopefully I've said that right. Perhaps it's Garance. I apologise again if I've butchered your name. What he says was, I think what he's trying to say is that he doesn't think the file system support thing was an afterthought, which I think was what we were putting forward. He thinks it was a deliberate decision, and he talks about he works at a college where people are basically sticking all their files on their desktop, and I absolutely feel that pain. It's
and I suppose this is, again, it comes from where we're coming from. We come from an era long gone now, really, where directory structure and organisation was critical to being able to find things again, whereas we're long past that now. And it does match a lot of people's habits. I mean, I love a clean desktop, as I know you do, but the amount of desktops you see out there with literally everything on it.
Yeah, it's one of my absolute pet hates for Windows when apps install a shortcut on the desktop. It's like, I don't want a shortcut to your app on the desktop. That's what the start menu and the taskbar is for.
Yeah.
Get lost.
You leave the desktop alone.
Go straight in the bin. The only thing that goes on my desktop is the files that I'm working on that need attention.
Yeah.
So if there's anything on my desktop, it's because I haven't sorted it yet.
Well, it goes back to, you think about a literal desktop. I like a clean desktop, but you have on your desktop the things you are working on, and then you put them away.
That's right. You put them away, people.
In theory.
We're quite getting a little bit kind of...
Put them away. How clean is your desk?
So I get that, and I think what Garance is trying to say is that Apple have thought about that, and it's a deliberate decision.
And it could well be right. It's a good insight. I think we're a bit dinosaurish in our way of looking at things sometimes, which is good. And it's good to have comments the other way as well.
It is. I have to say, though, Pete, with the files, because I did this the other day, I needed to copy some files off of my iPad onto an external drive. There's no progress bar. When you're copying 100 gigs of video files off onto an external drive, you kind of like to have a progress bar so that you can see what's going on.
Yeah, I mean there isn't one. Microsoft have done that for years, haven't they? Given really accurate progress bars on how things are going.
Oh dear! But do you know what I mean? There's no visual cues as to what's happening, and I think that makes it awkward because you're thinking, well, what's going on? Because it does take a bit of time. The port on the existing iPad isn't particularly fast. Hoping the new one is much faster.
And I suppose you've got that anxiety that has it hung, that kind of thing. Do you know, I had a thought on progress bars and indicators. You know, if you were on the International Space Station or on a future mission to Mars as an astronaut, and you saw your oxygen progress bar, and then saw underneath powered by Microsoft, would you panic a little bit?
I think I would be very, very nervous.
Yeah. Did you see the SpaceX land the other day?
I have seen SpaceX landings.
Oh,
I didn't see that
one.
particular
Incredible. Incredible. We are living in the future, folks. It's amazing.
one. So I'm still waiting for my flying car, though.
Well, just drive faster. The other thing that occurred to me after we had that chat last week is multitasking. iPads aren't really great at multitasking. It's not that they can't multitask. It's just that it's a deliberate choice, I think, by Apple to limit that functionality. So, for example, on a laptop, you can be on a video conference and have a document up at the same time, and it doesn't stop the video conference from streaming. But I picked up on something that was interesting that Zoom have just announced, is that they've been given special access in iPad OS to a part of the API that allows them to use the iPad camera app while you're in split screen. So what that means is at the moment, if you're using Zoom to do video conferencing of any kind, which obviously during the pandemic has been massively important for businesses and other applications as well, is unless you have Zoom using the full screen, if you then either switch to another app or try and split the screen, the video will go dark because the iPad OS precludes that from happening, unless you have special access to this API, which Zoom now have. So what that means is in the future, you will be able to split your screen while on a Zoom call, have something else up, and your video will continue to work, which is great news.
Well, that makes the iPad, again, much more useful because it's a weak point at the moment. You can't use it very well for video conferencing at work. And if you want your iPad to be a real computer replacement, we need that function.
We do. And I think if we couple that, you mentioned in the video on your main channel about the new iPad with that ultra-wide camera that tracks your face. If that deals with the issue of the offset camera when you're in landscape mode, that will be a real step forward. But it is only for Zoom at the moment. I don't know if it's going to be given access to for other video conferencing apps that you may use like Teams. But it's a step forward.
So, yeah, I think it will be given to other people because you've got a thought on this.
Well, I just, there's this case starting or has started with Epic Games versus Apple. And one of the things that Epic Games are taking Apple to court over is the fact that they say that the Apple Store is non-competitive. Apple basically control everything and they favour certain developers over others. And Apple are saying, no, that the App Store gives everyone an even playing field. But what I don't really want to go too much into this because it's a bit of a hot potato and I'm not fully read up on it. But I do think it's interesting that Epic Games do have a bit of a point here. If Zoom are getting access to an entitled part of the API that not everyone gets access to, not every software developer gets access to, well, that is not an even playing field. And I'm sure Apple will be able to give all sorts of reasons why you wouldn't give every developer unfettered access to an iPad camera, for example. I can think of lots of security reasons why it may be in everyone's interest that you only use trusted developers. But if that is the case, then it's not an even playing field. So you can't have your cake and eat it.
So I'm going to counter that with I don't think it makes an uneven playing field, and I don't think it's preferential treatment. I think it's development. In the same way that prior to releasing Big Sur and the Apple Developer Kit, Apple had already been working with Adobe, Microsoft, and other big players to get stuff brought to the new platform. So they worked together to make sure that there was good software support and presumably that the new M1 Apple Silicon platform was well tested.
Yeah.
This could well be the same thing, and I imagine that's what Apple would argue, that they're working with Zoom to create this feature, because I suspect that the big issue is privacy, because not just because of the way the iPad does multitasking, where it suspends apps that are not in current activity. There are some apps that do allow background activity on iPad, so it is a selective process. And I suspect the whole split screen thing means that if the camera's on screen and you can see your face on screen, then that will be okay then to multitask. So I suspect that's the route they're going to go down. And if they do that, then there's not a massive privacy risk with developers. I mean, Apple are, as we know, very, very strict in applying their rules when you upload an app to the App Store. So I think that this will be available for everybody. So I don't think it helps Epic Games' case, personally.
Yeah, probably not, but we'll see. Obviously, Epic Games may have their own agenda in what they're doing.
Well, imagine if having used someone else's app platform to market your product and become enormously successful, and then you think to yourself, I'd like a taste of that, and you're thinking about setting up your own app store, and you want to attract many developers, and you need to get the message out that you've got an app store that's cheaper than Apple's.
Yeah.
What would be a great way to achieve that?
Oh, but the PR through maybe some kind of legal action.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I'm not taking sides here, but I can see both sides of the story, and a lot of people. It seems to be very polarizing, this whole Epic Games versus Apple thing, and I've seen a lot of comments on this where people are saying, it's outrageous that Apple take 30%. No, it's not outrageous at all. In the traditional sense of things, back in the old days when we used to go to a game shop and buy our game, well, the publisher's making a markup, the wholesalers markup, the retailers markup, everyone's making a cut, and I bet that's a lot more than 30%. And that's the way of things. Apple made it easier for people to make a lot more money from their development. So to sign up to that and agree to those terms and then, get upset because of the amount of money you've made, that seems to be the issue here. It's a bit like, when you start a business and you get an investor in, let's suppose you need 100 grand to start your business and an investor ponies up £80,000 and you've put in 20 grand and the business is wildly successful and it's worth £1 million the following year. And you're getting 200 grand and the investor's getting 800, but you've done all the hard work. Is that fair?
Well, yeah, because that's what you agreed to.
Right. And the investor took all the risk.
Yeah.
So there are differences, of course, with Apple, and there's lots of arguments for and against. But when you look at the big perspective, this is just business. Microsoft do the same thing. They're taking cuts. Google do the same thing and take cuts. Microsoft, for the gaming platform, do the same thing. And so does Sony.
And at the end of the day, I know we joke, but Apple does have to make money in order to continue to deliver the things that we like, that Apple give us. So the hardware, the software, the App Store, those things cost money. And yeah, Apple make a ridiculous amount of profit, but that enables them to innovate, take risks. The same with Google. It's the same with all these big companies. They can afford to take risks on things that don't necessarily pan out because they have that cash to do so.
Yeah, and there are lots of companies that probably wouldn't have been as successful as they have been
without that App Store.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Apple do support certain. I think their support is flawed, but they do support certain individuals. Nothing is perfect, but at the end of the day, let's see this for what it is. It's a bit of a it's a bit of PR, and it's a test case as well.
Yeah,
let's be clear. A lot of people buy Apple devices. Well, some people buy because it's the brand. Some people don't really know, but a lot of people buy because of the privacy and that, what do you call it? Walled in.
Chinese walled secure system.
Secure system, yeah, and apps do get thoroughly checked out. That doesn't mean that stuff doesn't get through, but compared to the Google Store and what they'll allow on, you probably are a little bit safer with an Apple device. And if you like that, then you need to, Apple need to be able to control it. Whether you like Apple having all of the control, I'm a bit uneasy about that, but still, you can't have that kind of system.
Can't have both.
No.
You can't have both. Anyway.
Tricky. We're
59 minutes, and it's recording this time.
That's good.
So,
this the moment that everyone's been waiting for, Pete.
Yeah. Daisy in the Rain enjoyed our little dog-chewed pencil story, and I thought I'd give you an update. So here's my dog-chewed pencil. The good news is now that my Whippet is now paired to this pencil, so that's quite useful. But I found my old one the other day.
Did you?
Yeah, I was convinced it was in the studio somewhere, and it wasn't. It was under the passenger seat in my car.
Excellent.
That's the update. Sorry, we probably.
I was waiting for something a bit more momentous.
Built that up a little bit more. Well, like I said, the pencil's paired to the dog now, so I can take its temperature remotely and stuff like that. So that's quite useful.
Where do you insert it to take the temperature?
There's a whole video coming on that. Thank you very much for all the kind comments from you all with regards to my recent personal experiences and bereavement. Very much appreciate those. So, yeah, thanks.
And it's good to see, Pete, that you're not wearing grey today, so you're not blending into the background. We had some comments about your disembodied head sort of floating around the screen.
Yeah, nobody wants my disembodied head.
Let's just do a couple more of the comments before we finish.
Okay.
Gail Franey talked about the difference between apps, and so far on the iPad you only get a cut down version of Photoshop. And that's certainly true. we need better app support. I stopped using Adobe's products because I cannot bear their subscription model, and I need another subscription in my life, like I need a nose right above my backside. It's just utterly unnecessary. You okay there, Pete?
Yeah, I can just a nose above your backside wouldn't work for many reasons, but carry on.
It is, when you think about it, your nose is placed in a pretty good place.
It is.
It could have been a lot worse. Couldn't it? Imagine if it was in your armpit. That wouldn't have been great. So yeah, I don't use Adobe apps. I do use Affinity, and the same thing is true. I mean, it's not the full version of Affinity, but it's very usable on the iPad. And what I like is that the bits that they've kept in and they've sort of enhanced are specific to the iPad Pencil use.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I don't personally want to get to the point where the iPad just has carbon copy clones of macOS software. I mean, we did say it'd be nice if you could dock it and run macOS, but
Yeah, but make use of the specifics of the hardware, like the pencil and the touchscreen, where appropriate, to enhance the utility of the program.
yeah, absolutely.
I thought James Elliott, regular commenter and subscriber, is with me on the tiles over the AirTags. Great product, used them for years, saved me on a number of occasions, and I'm kind of with you on that. Although someone else did make the point that with a tile, you have to be another tile user to work out where a tile might be, which is obviously a much smaller ecosystem than with the AirTags, where you have to be an iPhone user. Admittedly, an iPhone, I think it's 11 and above, to use certainly the U1 chip. But I think tile are great, and we'll just have to see. I'm going to get my hands on some AirTags and have a play, and maybe we can have some fun with them. But we'll see.
Excellent. Look forward to that. I like the comment from Malk H, where he talks about Apple keeping the chin on the iMac as a place for the post-it industry.
Yeah, which was a great comment.
Yeah, it's so true. I've even seen that in our office. Not passwords, but certainly post-it notes with
Credit card numbers, that sort of thing.
Mainly that kind of thing, yeah. Vija iTech, again, a regular of the channel from way back. He's asking us, is the UK all vaccinated yet? No, it's not. And I've got my vaccination on Thursday, so I'm expecting some unpleasantness. Most people seem to be getting a little bit ill with the AstraZeneca one, which is what I suspect we'll be having. You usually get sort of a day of grogginess, I think. Some people have had it worse. So.
I had it worse, yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. You must be coming up to your second dose.
Next month.
Yeah. So we are fortunate, I have to say, in the UK. Our vaccination programme is very good, and the situation is under control, or it appears to be. I don't mean that the UK has controlled the situation. I mean the numbers are much lower than they were. It's heartbreaking to see what's happening in some parts of the world. It really is. So,
if you're in a part of the world that isn't doing so well, our thoughts go out to you, and really, really thinking of you at this incredibly challenging time for so many people.
Yeah, just checking if there's any other comments. Some people say they miss your jokes, Pete. I can only assume they haven't heard any of them.
Well, funnily enough, talking about the vaccine and that, I had the vaccine in my leg. Pfizer killing me.
Really?
You asked for it.
Tom, can you edit in a tumbleweed at that moment?
Or a Anyway.
2 drums and a cymbal fell off a cliff.
I will prepare some further dad jokes for next week, because I know how much you guys love them, and you love Dave's reaction to them as well.
Yeah. I think we should probably call it a day there. There are other comments that we did enjoy and don't always manage to respond to all of them. Time is, of course, limited, but we do appreciate them, do read them. So thank you very much for leaving those, and well done if you've stuck with us for this amount of time, because I think we're at 1 hour and 5 minutes.
We are. Yeah.
So it is time for us to end the Constant Geekery podcast.
Cheerio.
Cheerio.